Thank you so much for having me here today. I know how valuable it is when a national team gets to come together in one physical location, so thank you. A couple of weeks ago, I was thinking, what have I got in common? Like, what might be some stories that I could share with you? Because the last time I was actually in a doctor's office or with a nurse was 15 years ago. My daughter turned 15 the weekend just gone, and this is the last time I've been to see a doctor. And yeah. Would you like me to give you some feedback? No. 3 months prior to giving birth, we found out that my daughter was breech, and a footling breech at that. And I remember we had to go in and see the doctor and the midwife because we had to have a discussion around if this baby comes out foot first and I'm not fully dilated, what the consequences could be. And I'm just sitting there going, oh my goodness, all I want is a water birth. And I remember Andy, the children's father, saying, look, we've got calves that are born foot first. You just put some baling twine around their feet, yank them out, swing them round to get the fluid out, and she's right. You know, it's that she'll be right, mate, kind of Kiwi attitude. And I can so remember the midwife and the doctors, the look on their face. And Andy's kind of like, we can go now, can't we? And on that note, we left. And I did have a natural birth, and she did come out foot first, and she's foot first in life with everything. She's pretty amazing. And the other story I was thinking was at the other end of life. Mum and Dad owned a rest home. It was a little boutique rest home, only had about 6 residents in it. Mum used to do palliative care. And I had just come back from overseas from doing my big OE, and the lady that was the caregiver there was leaving to go and do her OE. And Mum said to me, would you like to be the caregiver? You'll need to do a few courses, food safety, quality, health and safety, working with the elderly. So I thought, yeah, why not? And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I can remember Mum and Dad one evening talking about how they would like to go away for the weekend, but possibly a little bit too soon with me going into that role. And I was like, no, go, you know, what could go wrong? Go. And I remember inviting my Auntie Helen, who was a qualified nurse, to come and spend the weekend with me. Well, on the Saturday night, she said that she needed to pop out. And she had a party to go to, and I was like, okay, you know, once they've had their cup of tea, everything will be fine. We used to give the ladies a cup of tea in the evening, a little bit of Mum's home baking. And I can remember going in to Peg. Peg was always the last lady that would be going to sleep, and she liked to do a little bit of reading. And I walked in, and there she was, and it looked like she was asleep. Her book was on her chest, and I was like, Peg. And there was no noise, and I put my hand on her arm, and it was completely cold. And I just had, it was like this real paradox of, oh shit, but also feeling grief because I'd developed the most beautiful relationship with this lady. I used to take her to do her hair on Thursdays, and I can remember thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? And so I remember Mum talking about a gentleman that had passed away just before I'd come home, and how she'd washed him down, and she'd found his favourite clothes, and she'd picked flowers out of the garden. So I'm like, you can do this. And I was ringing Auntie Helen and leaving message after message saying, you've got to get back here. And then thinking, oh my gosh, I haven't phoned the family who are over in Narawahia. So I'm kind of then calculating the time frame that I've got until they arrive. And I went to put in Peg's teeth, and of course rigor mortis by this time had set in, and I could not get the teeth in. And I can remember Auntie Helen then called. I was like, what am I supposed to do? Her mouth will not shut, the teeth keep falling out, the family's going to be here in 15 minutes. And she's like, Theresa, calm down. Go to your mother's first aid kit. There is super glue in there. And I'm like, what? So sure enough, I get the glue. I'm in fight, flight, right? There's no conscious prefrontal cortex shut down. And I'm in there. And then, because you can smell the glue, so then I've got air freshener going in. Then you can smell that. So then I'm opening up the window, trying to get the smell out. And then finally the family arrive, and I think that they are more concerned about me, you know, the state that I'm in, than their mother. But isn't it, I just find it so fascinating, this journey from when we're born to when we pass away. And I've travelled to places like the Pamukal Baths in Turkey, stood outside the most amazing structures in Greece, climbed all over Stonehenge. Of course, now it's fenced off, but I still think that the most fascinating structure is us as a human being. We've got the likes of you guys, qualified nurses, at this end here, where you have invested your time and money and life and passion to learn about the human body. Like, you're right up there with doctors and cardiologists and neuroscientists and chiropractors, you know, people that are really interested to understand. And then we have this other extreme where you might have at school laid down on a piece of brown paper, drawn an outline and gone, here's my eyes, here's my hands, here's my heart, here's my gut. And that's about it, combined with your life experiences. I remember when I was pregnant with Jordan, and I remember saying to my partner, 3 months, like 3 months, we're going to get a nanny and I'll be back at work. But the interesting thing was that my head, while it said you're going back to work, my heart had a very different plan. And I was very fortunate to be able to be in a position where I could have the first 5 years off with my children. So 18 months after Jordan, along came Travis, who was a 10 pound to 8, so a big baby, and he just keeps growing. I also remember him being little on his motorbike, fully immersed in the joy and experience of life, and now he's on a big motorbike and my heart beats as I watch him doing motocross. When the children were old enough, I started doing some interest papers in organisational behaviour, physiological psychology. I studied neurolinguistics, did my practitioner, master practitioner, trained the trainers, and I was invited a couple of years after that to go over to a solo in Italy with David Rock, who is the founder of the Neuro Leadership Institute. They work with neuroscientists and leaders to understand how the brain works, and understanding the brain, how we can get better in terms of our change management and our leadership practices. We had a speaker that was fascinating on quantum physics, a neuroscientist that talked about the placebo effect and things that were going on at that point in time around the placebo. I remember a fascinating one around pain and how we can increase and decrease pain just purely through perception and mind. 2 other scientists that I really wanted to see was Dr. Joe Dispenza and Dr. Bruce Lipton. Dr. Joe Dispenza is doing a lot of work around meditation and brain scanning and understanding what happens from a physiological point of view when we truly get in to that present state of being. And then Dr. Bruce Lipton, who teaches epigenetics. And so, as I was unable to get into a room with them, I brought them to New Zealand. And we had an amazing session with Dr. Joe Dispenza. I all of a sudden became this event manager overnight, 150 people in the room. And then I co-hosted Dr. Bruce Lipton with the Chiropractic Association. And really interesting, at that time, I had an opportunity to be in a documentary with these guys, which was all around perception and wellness. And funny thing, one of our engineers happened to see that documentary. I'm not too sure how, because it's unlisted, but watched that documentary on YouTube and then watched all the other videos that I had on YouTube. And he was looking at me the other day and he was like, Theresa, what do you find interesting about assets? Like, aren't they boring? And it's really interesting, because what I find fascinating about assets is that assets have a life cycle. They are born and they die. And if we understand the function of that asset and we understand how they could fail, then we can put actions in place to mitigate the risk of failure. No different to us as human beings. We are born and we die. And if we understand how we function and how we can fail, then same thing, you know, like we can put actions in place to mitigate the risk of failure. The only difference between an asset and the human being is that we have consciousness. We have a brain. And science has been showing us for many years now that we have a brain not just in our head, but our heart and our gut. And if we have these complex adaptive neural networks, then we have the ability to learn, store, and recall information from past events. And, you know, an event is just an event in life until we attach meaning to it. And from that meaning, we attach emotion. And then we can have these extremes of emotion, from joy, where we expand into growth, through to the other extreme of fear, where we shut down and we go into protection. And in my model of the world, this is the path that leads us towards disease. And this is the path that opens us up onto this beautiful journey into growth and wellness. We are at a time in history where we have so much knowledge and resources. It's just unlimited at our fingertips. Yet we still have disease. We have increasing levels of mental illness. We have increasing levels of obesity, injury through negligence. I remember I was invited recently to do a learning and performance piece around hazardous substances. And when I had a good look, I was like, well, hang on a minute. We've got our safety data sheets. We've got our JSAs. We have our standard operating procedures, spill kits, PPE stations. Everything is there. We have health and safety experts, HAZSUBS experts. We have an act and regulation around this. Yet we still have injury. So the knowledge, the resources is there, yet mind gets in the way. My brother has cerebral palsy. All his life, he was told what to eat. He was told what exercises to do. He was in and out of the doctor's office. He had all the knowledge and resources and support around what he needed to do to live a healthy life and to be mobile. When he hit his early 20s and he was assessed to be able to go into his own unit, his own little place through Housing New Zealand, and he's still there and he loves it. But all of a sudden, he's stopped doing everything that he knows that he needs to do to live a healthy life, and he's put on a lot of weight and he's lost a lot of his mobility. Now, I remember as children, we used to climb up into the hay barn and he would pull himself up on the bales and would make all these huts. You know, he was on crutches, he was so physical and active. Yet all of a sudden, he goes into his place and he goes, well, now I can eat what I want, I can exercise if I want or if I don't want to, because I'm in control of my life and nobody can now tell me what to do. Yet the paradox in that is that while he's in control, or he thinks he's in control of his life, he's actually completely out of control. So again, the knowledge and the support and the resources are there for him, but he chooses to live a different life. This is something that I find fascinating when we start to look at the workforce. And here in this room, we have an amazing body of knowledge, and you have the resources. And if we've got knowledge that we can apply in a context, then we have skill set. Yet, what is it beyond here that helps us to achieve our vision and our purpose? It has to be more than skill set. How many of you guys have experienced or seen where people in roles that are really good at what they do then get put into a managerial role and then they start to fail? You know, example, mechanical engineering, really good at their trade, really good. And then they get put into a leadership role and all of a sudden, they're not responsible just for their trade, but they are responsible for the people that are responsible for the trade. So there are so many things in this space here that need to happen as well in order for us to get to our purpose and our vision. I was invited to speak at a program called She Led, an amazing program with our teenage girls, second to last year of school, starting to think about what they might be curious about, what might they like to step into when they leave school. And it's an interesting one, because I kind of believe at that age you're still thinking about what you might like to do. You're still learning, you're still growing. So I got them to write down 10 things that they are interested in, that they Googled, what are they curious about? And then to think about, if they were to look at those things, how could they start to group into different types of roles that they might be interested in? And within the group, there were a couple that were quite adamant they wanted to be vets. And I said, okay, so let's imagine that you all in this room wanted to be vets. And there was one job advertisement for a vet. So out of the 30 of you, you're all qualified vets. You put your application in. What is going to be the difference? What's the difference that will make the difference for you? What will give you that edge? How do you start to build your personal brand beyond skill set, beyond your knowledge, beyond resources? And so I ask you guys here as well, what will give you the edge beyond your skill set? And when we start to look at our personal brand from that perspective and ask questions like, how am I influencing? How am I leading? How am I learning? Because knowledge, resources, processes, skill set can only get us so far. I love the work that you did yesterday where you asked the question, how do I want to be perceived by the business? And that's a great question. I truly believe that the quality of our life is in direct reflection of the quality of the questions that we ask. So I'd like to invite you to jump into groups of 4 or 5 and to ask the question, what is it beyond skill set that will get me closer to living my purpose, that will get us as a team closer to living our purpose and enabling our vision? Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. It's actually just taken me back to a discussion that I was having with a friend a couple of weeks ago. And he asked the question, he said, Theresa, do you think that we have run out of social capital? And so he was talking about social capital in terms of organisations that have support functions like food safety quality, health and safety, learning and performance, business improvement. Have we run out of social capital? Who can define social capital?
It almost sounds like it's those nice to have things, those luxuries, when you describe it as you just did.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, because we could even sometimes the perception is that these things are the nice to have things, whereas in fact they're absolutely critical. So social capital, the calculation is pretty much our skill set, being inspired, relationships, and trust. So I said to my friend, is the question, have we run out of social capital? Or should we be asking the questions, how am I skilling? How am I reskilling? How am I upskilling? How am I sharing my inspiration? You know, to inspire is to breathe in to breathe our inspiration into somebody so that they feel our inspiration. They feel inspired to come on that journey with us. So how am I inspiring? How am I sharing, you know, that passion? How am I relating? Am I relatable? And then trust. How am I building trust? When we're thinking about trust, skill set is a key piece. You know, credibility. Does that person actually know what they're doing? Are they credible? Can I rely on them? Are they reliable? Do they care about me? When I'm with that person, is it just compliance? I'm ticking a box, I'm a number, I've got to get in and out. Do they actually care about me? And then in terms of focus, where is their focus? And, you know, is it just on themselves or is it on other? Are we here together? Or again, are they just focused on doing their own thing and have no interest in me? That's what I love in the new purpose, you know, at the end where it says you, me, us together, it's we. So how do we develop that? The interesting thing is, for people to feel inspired, you have to be inspired. To influence, you have to be influenced. To move someone, you have to be moved yourself. So really important that we feel a sense of congruency here, because it's really hard to lead and influence if you don't. One of life's greatest gifts is feeling like you have found your life's purpose. And that life purpose needs to align to the organisation's purpose. And if it doesn't, find a way to make it align. Because when you feel truly connected into your purpose, into the organisation's purpose, you feel alive. You feel alive. And others want to be part of that journey. They want to follow you. So I'd like to invite you to jump up in a moment and to answer 2 questions. And those questions are, why do I love what I do? And how do I know that what I do makes a difference? So there's some really cool stuff that's coming up there when you ask the question, how do I know that what I do makes a difference? Things like appreciation, family, community, connection, smiles. The next level is thinking about how do I know that what I do makes a difference directly into the manufacturing lines, within the plants, with the leadership teams that you're working with. So what are some of the things that they're measured by? And it's things like OPT, on product time, cost of conversion, cost of quality failures. So how do you connect in and how do you work with the leadership team to help close the gap between what they're measured by and what you do, how that adds value? And certainly, if somebody is fit and healthy and well for work, then that has a direct line of sight into making a difference. It's about how do you have the communication, the conversation, to help show that value and close that gap.
Is there?
Yeah, is it clear in terms of being able to measure? I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, certainly when we think about job satisfaction, so from 0 completely unsatisfied within my job through to 10 being 100% satisfied in my job, so many studies have shown that when we are down in that low level of job satisfaction, when we are dissatisfied, that we have higher rates of staff turnover, we have higher rates of absenteeism, we have higher rates of stress, higher rates of mental illness in the workplace, low level of commitment, lower productivity, lower performance, and all of those things that you guys are in here supporting, all of those things feed into our end results.
Do you think there's a good understanding of that link?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it's one that many support teams ask. I've been in a number of deployments in manufacturing, both within and outside of Fonterra, and I've come to the thinking, is it a gap in understanding, or is it that there's just no gap in the priority list with everything that goes on for these guys? So when they're thinking of, how do I get a reduction in cost of conversion? How do I get better plant stability? How do I feed things like food safety quality? You know, before when we were talking about cost of quality failures, we've got to focus on that as well. So is it about a gap in understanding? And instead of kind of going in and going, right, this is the thing that we need to get in your face and we're important as well, how do we help to link importance to what is already important for them? How do you get in front of mind? There's a thing called the recency effect, which is that we will act on the most recent things that are in our minds. So how do you start to get into some of these forums, get FaceTime, you know, at plant manager forums, leadership days, actually communicating your compelling story? So I'm seeing 2 things here, 2 key stakeholder groups. You've got your leadership team, which is your stakeholder group that's about culture and leadership. How do you add value? How do you help to align meaning from what's valuable to you to what's valuable to them? So it's an alignment there. And values is just simply what's important to us. So you've got these people that lead the people that come in to see you, and then you've got the people that come in to see you. And for this group, it's about how they make meaning of the world and what's of value to them, what do they value. And before we were talking about, in one of the breakout sessions, we were talking about how sometimes these individuals turn up and they're engaged, and other times they turn up late or they just don't turn up at all. So how do you help to change the meaning for them? How do you help to change the experience for when they come in? And with the individuals, you're simply dealing with how they make meaning of the world. Let's imagine we have Brian, and Brian as a child remembers playing out in the playground, enjoying himself, and then he has to come in the line with all the other children to get his jabs. And he remembers coming up and feeling the fear as he's getting closer, and the needle jabs into his arm. All he feels is pain, and felt like he was on a conveyor line, and out he goes. And a couple of years later, he breaks his arm. He ends up in the doctor's, in the waiting unit. He's feeling quite sick. He vomits everywhere, and he overhears the nurse saying to the lady on reception, "Oh my God, I'm going to have to clean up that bloody mess." And he's not feeling very good at all. A few other things happen, and then he gets a job at Fonterra and is told that he's going to have to go and have a medical and see the nurse. Brian has already made meaning about you before he's even walked into your room. So Brian has generalised, deleted and distorted his meaning of the world. He has generalised that every experience of the past is going to equal my experience of today and my experiences of the future. So when you have goals that you are moving towards as a team, he is going to sabotage those goals because of his conditioning. He will find ways to sabotage, to find other things that are more important, to procrastinate. So it's your job to shift that meaning, to give him another experience so that he walks out going, wow, that was a different experience. That was a really, good use of my time versus what a waste of time. It's always the same old, same old. So how do you shift that? Now, I've seen that I can see here that you've done a lot of study in terms of coaching models and having those courageous conversations. Like this book, there's this is just packed with all the stuff that I love in it. This is awesome. I'm going to add another model to this, and I call it the 3 C's of conversation, being a caring, curious, and courageous conversation. So when we are connecting with an individual, we connect first at a heart level, and we connect from a place of care. And I'm hearing that, this is your passion. This is what you're here to do anyway. You're inspired to do. So how do we connect at a heart level? How often do we, say, "Hi, how's it going?" And they go, "Good," and we carry on as if it's a throwaway comment. But when we connect at a heart level, from a place of caring, and we actually ask, "How are you?" we stop to listen, and we listen to that response. And we even see if we can get a question in to draw more of that out. That then leads us to curiosity, which is shifting from the heart to the head. How do I become really curious about this person? Now, I can't be curious and find out about this person if I'm the one doing the talking. So it's not about talking more, but asking more. And there's a saying, and that is that when your mouth is open, you are not learning. So how do we be curious? How do we show we are interested? How do we listen with intent to understand, not with intent to reply? It's about being present in the moment and entering every conversation assuming that you have something to learn. So the second C, which is about curiosity, getting curious, we have to ask a lot of open-ended questions to draw out, starting with that person's value. What do they value in the world? Hey, what's important to you? How do we work towards the same goals here? That's interesting. How do you know that to be true for you and your world? Why is this important to you? Well, what would happen if we did try that? When it comes to having a coaching conversation, and before we were talking about the GROW model, GROW, goal, reality, opportunities, way forward. Pretty much with every coaching model, there's a desired state, an outcome that we want to get to, and a present state, current reality, and there's a gap. And the 2 key questions are, well, how will I know when I'm there? and what prevents me currently from getting there. If we're clear on our outcome and we understand where we're currently at, then how do we close that gap? And then the third C, being courageous, having that courageous conversation. Courage is about having the willingness to jump into uncertainty. It is the door to building confidence for us to take action. And at the end of the day, this is a conversation with purpose. We want to get some action out of this. So caring, we've built connection, we've built rapport with the person, we've become curious about their world, and then the courageous piece is about the guts, taking that gutsy action. How do we move forward from here? So I'd like to invite you to jump into groups of 3. We're going to have an A, a B and a C, and I will come around and support and ask any questions that you might have. But we're going to have the 3 C's of conversation and bring everything that you have been studying in terms of your coaching conversations, the format quadrant, why, what, how, where, what if, the courageous conversations that you've gone through as well, everything that's in this cool book, like bring it all to life in a, what, if you want to call it a role modelling session. So you're going to have A, this is your stakeholder, B, who is you, so you are leading the 3C conversation, and then C, and C is the observer. So this is your peer support person. So this peer support person is there to give you feedback. Now there are a lot of different feedback models. There is the feedback sandwich, the take, the peer, but 2 things when it comes to feedback that are really important. Number 1 is ask for permission. And that's as simple as asking a question. Hey, would it be okay if I gave you some feedback? When we ask first, people are more likely to receive. And then focus on behaviour. So when it comes to behaviour in the 3 C's, how are they building connection? How are they building rapport? Is there some feedback in terms of how they could adjust their physiology? Did you notice that there could be some opportunities where that person could have asked a really good open-ended question to get to a deeper level understanding, to draw more out and add more value to the conversation? And then courage. Did you notice where there could have been opportunities where they could have got some action that could have got them closer to their outcome, to their goals? And lastly, use this time wisely. Think about situations currently happening in your workplace where you could work through this and get some insights that you can take from today to take back to your work environment to apply and get a different outcome. So in groups of 3, and we may, looking at the numbers, have some 4s, please find a space, break out into your teams, and I will come around and help to clarify, ask any questions, support where I can. There's some really cool research at the moment going on around the state of flow, and who can explain the flow state when we're truly in flow? It's a you know you.
I say bowels are working well, but it's
I would imagine that would be a key part, you know. You're not holding on to any shit, you're letting it go. But when you're truly in flow, you know, you're in that space in between your thoughts, you're fully inspired, you're in that place of creativity. It's the source of inspiration, it's that high level of job satisfaction that we were talking about. McKinsey did a study over 10 years and looked at the flow state and how that has an impact on productivity and performance. And you can Google McKinsey and flow state study. And what they identified was that less than 5% of employees get into that state. And when they worked with some top executives, it identified that when they can truly get into that state where they feel completely connected, where they're outside the inner critic that goes on and truly in the present moment, it lifts performance by 500%. And one of the things that kills the flow state is email and getting caught in box. Because you know what it's like, you start with one and then before you know it, and then you've got Teams popping up now. And so nice, thank you, that was a nice reflection. What have we got over here? Physiology is an unconscious process. We naturally, do this matching and mirroring that goes on. It's a complete unconscious process, and the greatest level of rapport that you can get with somebody is when you match their breath. That's incredible. Notice next time when you're sitting with somebody, notice their breathing, and then change your breath to breathe the same pace that they do. It's just incredible the different level of connection that you can get. Yeah. What's fascinating as well though is that we don't think about breathing. Was anybody thinking about breathing before I said the word breathing? We don't think about it. And in the world that we are in, we get into these really short breaths. But science is showing us now that it should be 6 seconds in and 6 seconds out. And when you actually try to do that, it's quite different. There's a lot of research now with HeartMath in the States that's showing the different outcomes and states that we can get into that gives us a good different result when we start focusing on that, which again connects into that flow state. It's one of the key things to do to connect into that state of flow. I just wanted to wrap up and say, remember also about you. In order to be able to care for others, you also need to care for yourself. What are you doing for you? And you guys know what you need to do for you. I do this crazy thing at night. I don't actually share this with people, but when I go to bed, I take, when I go to bed, I just take a moment, and it's become habit now. It's just something that I do, where I breathe a smile into my heart. And I think about what it is that I'm grateful for. Because gratitude, I think, there's so many, the attitude of gratitude, we need to be grateful, but the power of gratitude is incredible because it brings us into this present moment and it gets us into that state of how we feel when we're thankful for something. And I bring my children, there's this image I have of my children when they're little and they're in the puddle and they've got their gumboots on and they're just in pure creativity, spending hours in play. I bring that into my memory and presence moment. And I breathe in from that smile into my heart, down into my toes. And then energetically, I just pull everything that feels heavy or dark or doesn't need to be there from the day, and up and out through the top, and it comes out in white sparkles. We're getting even more woo-woo now. and then it's off to sleep. And so it's just letting go. It's letting go of what was there in the day. And I think sometimes, we have a day, we get home, and then we're busy, and we've got children, if we have children, families, and others that we're thinking about. And then we're into bed, and then the next day starts. But taking some time for you. And can we just show that? There was I saw that last night when I was driving home from Auckland. It took me back to my children when they were little, and I thought, they just naturally do this. They create their own happiness. They enjoy the little things. They laugh out loud, like the laughter in the puddles and mud everywhere, making their mud pies, eating their mud pies. I was one of those mothers, eat your mud pies and don't wash your hands. We'll build up your immunity that way. Embracing every opportunity. And I wish for you, for me, for us together, that we come to the end of our lives and we can look back and we can go, you know what? I did laugh out loud. I created my own happiness. I enjoyed the little things, and I can truly say that I embraced every opportunity. Thank you so much for having me. It was really cool to spend the afternoon with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. I'll put the super glue in.
I think that's awesome. And I would love to have you back another time if you're up for it.
I'd love to.